I have these green tart Granny Smith apples lying around, so I started peeling 6 medium-sized ones and slicing them thinly, hoping to make great apple pie. The Smiths are the best because the tartness balances well with the sweetness of the sugar which I am about to add. Other varieties can be used as well, but they may come up too sweet and with some of less compact consistency, leaving the filling a bit too soft. Grannies have the best balance of tart and texture for this dessert. Just as cake, there are basic proportions in making pie crust, which is most important. Not only does it hold the pie, but it is what pie is all about. When flaky, mixed with the perfect buttery crunchy texture and the right sweet salt flavor, it provides the best backdrop for the filling. With that in mind, I got 2 sticks of butter in lower than room temperature and cut them into small 1/2 inch slices, mixing them with likewise 2 cups of all-purpose flour. About 1 to 3 tablespoonfuls of sugar and about 1 teaspoon of salt were added before I proceeded with cutting through the dough using 2 blunt knives. This process is known as cutting pastry, and what it actually meant was to cut butter further into smaller pieces, developing butter pockets as each particle becomes enveloped in the flour dough. These butter pockets melt in the oven as the flour dough is left behind, thus creating the flakiness of pastry. When the butter is small enough into pea-sized pieces, about 1/8 of a cup of ice-cold water is added only to release the wheat gluten, making essentially the flour dough giving its texture. Handling the flaky pastry with your hands, gather them into one solid mass. As one can see, streaks of butter can be found in between the flour dough. These are the pockets of butter which I am referring to. Divide the dough into 2/3, 1/3. The larger one for the bottom crust and the smaller one for the top. For easier rolling, place them in between wax paper and somewhat chill a bit in the refrigerator for about 5 minutes before rolling. With the dough a bit cool, roll until about 1/4 of an inch thick. Roll evenly as much as possible, and since the dough is in between the wax paper, it is easier to handle and estimate just how it fits the pie pan. You can even trim the sides where the extra crusts are found and add them to the sides where it is lacking. But once you think that the crust fits enough into the pan, arrange it, conforming to the bottom corners, and slowly remove the wax paper. Set this aside. Going back to the sliced apples, add about 3/4 cup of brown sugar, 1/2 cup of flour, a stick of butter, and about a tablespoonful of cinnamon. Brown sugar is the best because it has that gentle sweet flavor that is less sickening than the strong sweetness of white sugar. But whether it is white or brown, both will serve the same purpose. The flour is there to create a paste as the apples are slowly cooked in the oven's heat. This solidifies the filling. The amount of cinnamon is left actually to taste, and the butter adds a little bit of dimension to the dessert. But need we say more? Mix the filling well until the sugar, flour, cinnamon, and butter mixture evenly covers the apple pieces. It is only when this is achieved that the filling is placed into the raw crust, pressing them carefully as it occupies the space. Setting this aside, roll the remaining piece of dough, using the technique I described before, applying this on the apples as you fold the overhanging sides of the bottom dough to meet the top. Seal the crust using the tines of a fork by pressing the dough's edge on the very sides of the pan. Do not forget to make some air vents on the pie. This is made by using the sharp edge of a knife and pressing them on the top in an even distribution, making it decorative as well. Bake in a moderate preheated oven of about 350 degrees for an hour. Tip: the heat may make the apples bubble later. So, to prevent from the drippings making a mess of your oven, have a cookie sheet on the bottom rack. I left this alone, turning on my trusty kitchen timer. Once the pie is done, you may choose to stop here. But for extra elegance, I decided to brush the top with an egg wash made with an egg and a bit of water beaten together. This provides some glistening on the pie later on. With the contrast of the roughness of sugar, I sprinkled about a teaspoon of white sugar as well. Depending whether you think the pie is a bit pale, you may choose to turn up the heat on broil for about 1 or 2 minutes. Now the pie is done. There is nothing much to do here but to leave it to cool in room temperature and enjoy later on. And as one can see, the flaky crust has peaks of delicate brown, with shiny surfaces contrasting the roughness of the white sugar. Certainly, this is a pleasant sight, and definitely a hit for your guests.